Listen, I hope I'm missing something here. I've been looking forward to Dehya since she was originally teased in the beginning of Sumeru. Because it's such an insane design, badass as hell, wicked entrance in the 3v5 livestream with the metal soundtrack, so and I'm sure a lot of you guys are hurt by the discovery of her flaws. She has a tank-based elemental skill and an all-out DPS-based burst, which seems pretty cool, but when the lack of kit synergy starts to show, it doesn't stop. YouTube frogs, here are my first impressions of C0 Dehya or Dehya and her gameplay, going over how she works, what my concerns are, and how you would build her in the current state and where she works. Let's begin. I'm going to start by saying that she is going to be a passion project. If you are going to invest in her, like I am, do it because you genuinely love her design and or find her gameplay enjoyable. In her current state, she will not improve the strength of your account, so please don't go after her if your goal is to 36 star the Abyss and you haven't done that yet. I'm going to grab at least C1 of her, probably C2, and max R5 her weapon. Because she's going to standard banner, her weapon probably won't come back, so if I want to max out her weapon, I gotta do it now. I'll get the rest of her constellations when I go for other characters and lose to off-rate ups. Do not follow my footsteps unless you're already dedicated to getting her and accepted how she is currently. At most, just live vicariously through me and see how she is through my content. So, Dehya. Primarily attack scaling with a little HP scaling, on-field pyro burst DPS with an off-field damage mitigation elemental skill. I would say that the focus of her kit centers around her elemental burst, as it's the only part of her kit that deals a recognizable amount of damage. Elemental skill leaves behind a fiery field which launches coordinated pyro attacks, think albedo, generates particles and provides damage reduction, transferred to Dehya as a damage over time. Normal charge attack doesn't really do much, because unfortunately, it has some incredibly low multipliers for unknown reasons. Low value to invest. Let's dive into some necessary details. Normal charge attacks. She's a Claymore user, with probably one of the lowest multipliers you'll ever see. It's lower than Deluxe, it's lower than Ito's, Eula's, and even 4 stars like Razor, Noelle, even Sayu and Dori, all at the same level 1 talent. Her attack speed is not significantly faster than an average Claymore to compensate, so that's a little strange, but fine. She doesn't need to rely on normal charge to DPS. Elemental skill. First tap, the Indomitable Flame. She throws down her fiery field dealing AoE Pyro. The first multiplier, this does not generate energy. When you attack while the field is down, at most once every 2.5 seconds, the field will unleash a coordinated attack of AoE Pyro. Third multiplier, attack and HP scaling, and every hit generates a single Pyro particle. So, 1 particle every 2.5 seconds. That's average. Second tap, Ranging Flame. Removes the previous field and throws down another, dealing slightly more damage. Second multiplier. With the remaining cooldown. This duration is not refreshed. So at C0, it lasts at most 12 seconds with a 20-second cooldown, 60% uptime. This leaves 4 to 5 of these procs during its lifetime. Total damage, not that great. While the field is up, characters inside it take reduced damage. It's reduced by this mitigation value, and that damage is transferred to Dehya. Dehya will take this damage over 10 seconds, off or on field, doesn't matter. With the Ascension 1 passive, the second tap or burst, the damage Dehya takes over time is reduced by 60%. On the first tap, all party members gain more resistance interruption for 9 seconds. This is quite nice against some usually hard knockback attacks. So with this ability, she's taking a lot of damage. The Ascension 4 passive kicks in when she's less than 40% HP. She recovers 20% instantly and 30% over time for a total of 50% max HP. Happens once every 20 seconds. So her elemental skill's primary job is tanking. It doesn't deal that much damage, but it helps your character survive longer. Elemental Burst. All this text basically says 9 to 10 single target pyro damage punches, first multiplier, and 1 AoE pyro dive attack, second multiplier, in 4 seconds. She'll remove any fiery field she has upon activation and replace them with whatever remaining duration after her burst is over. That part sucks because that means she doesn't have her own field for her own burst, which we'll get to in a bit. In these 4 seconds, she cannot cast her elemental skill or normal charge, and her burst doesn't count as any of those either. Just burst damage. This means a lack of synergy with off-field supports that proc on normal charge like Shincho Yell on Beidou, meaning the usual supports for Pyro DPS lack synergy with Dehya. Multipliers double dip into attack and HP, both of which are not the greatest but not the worst. But because she doesn't have access to popular supports, her damage ceiling is much lower. 70 energy cost, 18 second cooldown, expensive burst. And because basically all of her damage comes from this, she'll need to prioritize ER to a degree or have supportive companions that assist her with that. Talent investment. Very simple. Elemental Burst over Elemental Skill over Normal Charge. 80% of her DPS comes from her Burst. Elemental Skill does about 20% from her coordinated attacks and the tap damage. Normal Charge, unfortunately, no multipliers. Maybe sits there for Valonian's procs. Okay, so gameplay concerns. Let's start with the unique part of her kit, her elemental skill. The first tap activates the Ascension 1's passive second part, which is the 9-second of Team Gold Form Resist Interruption. Pretty nice. But her burst takes the field away. So that means that the resistance interruption will be removed during the burst, and then it'll come back afterwards. This means she cannot generate energy because her field is away, and she doesn't have the resist interruption, so she can be slapped out of her burst with a hard enough knockback attack. Elemental skill's coordinated attack happens only once every 2.5 seconds. Beyond the low total damage because it has such few procs, this also makes her poor at Burgeon enabling, since her power application to the Dendro cores is so slow. Characters like Toma with much faster pyro hits pop the cores at a better rate. Both of her passive talents, they focus on recovery and durability of her gameplay. This means that she has no additional offensive traits from these to benefit her burst damage. Considering that her constellations all aim to improve her burst uptime, this seems like a weird attempt at benefiting both aspects of her kit, but then both of them are like not that strong. Her elemental skill is designed to gain maximum value off-field when she mitigates damage for her teammates. If you do this, she cannot optimally gain her own energy generation. This is not inherently a problem, but that's when we get into her burst. It's 70 energy cost and an 18-second cooldown ability, which means she's energy hungry. With the way her skill is designed, she's not generating that much for herself unless she's on field all the time. So she needs help or insane artifacts if you want her main DPS ability to be up as much as possible. The lack of synergy with normal charge attacks means that strong Hydro supports that usually enable Pyro DPS to pop off are lost. And like we mentioned, she takes her own field away, so she can be interrupted, and she can't generate energy during her burst. Okay, so that's fine. Let's not prioritize her burst then, and just infuse her normal attacks and pop off that way. Multipliers, for some reason, are the weakest multipliers I think we've seen for a Claymore in some time. So by design, you're less incentivized to auto. Your burst is really expensive, so she's designed to be a tank focused on her elemental skill, but she doesn't really tank that well. C0 is a 60% uptime, and we already have shields and healing in the game that can support 100% uptime with decent energy generation for a fully supportive role. And the other half is the all-out burst from the DPS, where all the constellations support it, but it's energy hungry. It only lasts for 4 seconds on 18 cooldown, which can't change, and it can't synergize with popular supports. So as it currently stands, budget investment Dehya might just be relegated to a Favonius Tenacity tank. But then this wastes her cool burst design, and it's not that optimal because the uptime's not that high, so, well, I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens with willed investment after I finish these base videos. Okay, so with all this in mind, how can we build her? Let's start off with the weapons. Taking a look at our signature weapon, the Beacon of the Reed Seed, we got a crit rate stat stick. Passive gives 20% attack if your E hits an enemy, 20% more attack if you take damage, and 32% HP if you don't have a shield. So for Dehya, this is a constant 40% attack, 32% HP, and 30% plus crit rate at R1. It's designed for DPS, which means it's designed for her burst, and it's got a lot of the stats that she scales off of. The only thing it lacks is energy recharge for maintaining her burst uptime. So if not her signature, what else do we have that can work with her build? So keep in mind that her Ascension stat is HP percent. So without a crit rate or crit damage weapon, her general crit ratio is going to be much harder to maintain. Other 5-star options. Redhorn Stone Thresher. Basically just a huge crit damage stat stick. Ignore the passive, it's useless for her. Wolf's Gravestone. Attack stat stick. Less value if you're running Bennett, because the attack will get diminishing. Unforged. Also an attack stat stick, but you have to assume that you're not running a shield, because even if you have one, it'll be destroyed pretty quickly when she goes on field. That's basically it for 5-star Claymores. We don't have much of a selection compared to other weapon types. You're not using Skyward Pride, it's not good at all. You won't be able to proc any of the passive because her elemental burst does not count as normal or charge attack. 4-star options. We have 2 burst damage bonus weapons. We have the Fish, which is the Sea Lord. It's a 2.1 event weapon, grants attack percent and burst damage bonus. We have Akumaru, the Gacha 4-star. Probably her best choice, but you do want it at high refinement. Not really accessible for a lot of players. It does grant up to 80% burst damage with some attack percent for a solid stat stick. It is energy dependent on your team, and she does have 70 energy, so hers is pretty high for that. We have several crit weapons with unfortunate passives that are basically useless. Serpent Spine. Ignore the passive. It's just a crit rate stat stick. You're going to be taking damage all the time, so you won't have the passive up. Same thing as Black Lip. It's just a crit damage stat stick with a very minor attack passive. Actually, not that bad. Lithic. You know, at most get 2 to 3 stacks. 2 if you're running Bennett with her. It's barely a crit rate stat stick, mostly an attack percent one. And then we get miscellaneous weapons. Prototype Archaic, basically the lowest of the lowest attack percent stat sticks. We have the Bell, HP percent stat stick. Passive shield will get destroyed. You won't be having this damage bonus. Favonius. Reliable energy recharge stat stick, can double as a supportive weapon if using her for just her E. We have the 3-star Aferis Shadow. It's also an HP percent stat stick. This is for like the 2 people in the world who have nothing else to use. And then the upcoming Mailed Flower. It's an elemental mastery stat stick with an easy access passive. It's usable for some one-off vape builds, and you're going to be able to get it for free at R5 once you finish the event. And honestly, that's basically it. There's not a great weapon selection for Dehya besides her own signature claymore, which also makes her not very FTP friendly for investment. Artifacts. As a character whose damage comes from her burst, welcome back to the emblem domain. Yay! So 4-piece emblem will prove the most valuable for her. The extra 20% recharge goes a long way on top of converting to burst damage from her 4-piece. You will still need plenty of energy recharge substats at a higher priority than crit value just to enable her rotation to happen fairly consistently. We also have options like 4-piece Crimson Witch and 4-piece Lava Walker as alternative DPS choices, though they are generally weaker than 4-piece Emblem. 4-piece Crimson Witch for vape builds, 4-piece Lava Walker for mono pyro build. 4-piece Vermilion set will not work. She doesn't lose HP fast enough during her own burst, which only lasts 4 seconds, so she won't be gaining a lot of the attack value from it. Any set that involves normal charge attack will not work. Elemental skill-based support can run 4-piece Tenacity with decent uptime. Without C2 though, her field only has a 60% uptime. And then experimenters on Burgeon and Burning related comps can slap any Elemental Mastery related set or the flower set for your use case. 2-piece combos, I just run 2-piece Emblem and 2-piece Crimson Witch. The energy recharge will be difficult to come by, so I really value 2-piece Emblem, and Dehya will need as much of that as possible. Otherwise, any attack percent related set, HP percent related, pyro damage related, burst damage related 2-piece sets will be just fine. Main stat choices. So even though she has split scaling on her burst damage, attack percent scales a lot more than HP percent, even if it gets diminishing with Bennett. So a standard pyro DPS. Attack, way overvalue HP, pyro goblet, and a crit mask. Focus 20 to 30% recharge subsets to hit the 140 to 150 with the 2-piece emblem. Timepiece alternatives. EM if you're running DPS screenshot vape builds and you're having Bennett. Energy recharge if you really don't have any substats and you can't get your burst back reliably. Then we have alternative niche builds, triple EM for Burgeon builds, and then we have HP, and then HP over crit rate for Favonius, Tenacity, Dehya, E support stuff. Take your poison and enjoy the ride. Team comps. So unfortunately, due to her gameplay design, we have some restrictions that otherwise would have been good synergies with her. The usual Pyro Vape DPS comp that uses Hydro supports, solo or double, with Yelan or Xingqiu, aren't as optimal because Dehya's burst does not count as normal attack, and her normal attack multipliers, if running Bennett Infusion, are dangerously low. So for now, these are what I've settled on as decent enough to make her work. Mono Pyro Dehya, consisting of Dehya plus Kazuha plus Xiangling and Bennett. This is just raw Pyro DPS. Okay, I know, we're using Kazuha and Xiangling and Bennett, which by themselves are already ridiculously strong. I know, okay? If you added Hydro in there for Vape Xiangling, it would be even stronger. I know, but we gotta do what we can for our girl Dehya, alright? So I usually lead with Dehya E here, and then I Bennett EQ, Kazuha EQ, Xiangling EQ, and then Dehya Q. She retrieves her E and then replaces it at the end. I did Kazuha E before Bennett EQ in the beginning, but usually I want to refund Kazuha's energy during his burst animation. And if we want to extend this to maximize Dehya's personal damage but sacrificing overall team damage, replacing Xiangling with Mona leads to Dehya, Mona, Kazuha, Bennett, which is the quintessential damage per screenshot team build. Mona's burst omen buff lasts the full duration of Dehya's burst, and occasionally you get the first hit to vaporize as well. Rotation is simple. Dehya E into Bennett, into Kazuha, into Mona holding Tilting Tails, into Dehya. Alright, what if we want to utilize Dehya's elemental skill Mitigation and Interruption Resist? Ganyu Burning Melt returns by using Dehya's elemental skill in place of a dedicated shield. Consisting of Ganyu and Dehya, and then usually Bennett plus Nahida, Dehya's skill resist enables Ganyu to reliably get off charge attacks without worrying about interruption resist. Burning keeps Pyro on the enemy. Dehya keeps Ganyu stable from melt charge attacks. This is taking advantage of Dehya's Ascension 1 passive, giving gold form resist buff during her elemental skill. In this demo, while I do have C6 Ganyu, that's not really relatable, so I just hold charge attacks to demonstrate that she's able to get them off without being interrupted. There is also enough downtime post Bennett burst to throw out Dehya's burst if you wish, before repeating the entire rotation. So for the rotation, I usually follow Nahida E with optional Q, Dehya E into Bennett EQ into Ganyu's charge attacks. And finally, here's a demonstration of Burgeon Dehya. Unfortunately, it's not that great. Dehya's elemental skill at Constellation 0 lasts only 12 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. 60% uptime maximum. It only activates once every 2.5 to 3 seconds for a maximum of 4 to 5 total activations. The ability also stays still, so if you're producing dendro cores not within range, they'll be wasted. Now, a simple comparison with Toma shows the utility difference of Toma's faster pyro application on new dendro cores for very consistent burgeons. This burst also follows the active character, making quality of life easier to maintain on mobile enemies. Overall, it's not that great, but it can still be used for big burgeon nukes, since this does allow the dendro cores to pile up before a detonation every 3 seconds. And that's my first impressions on Constellation Zero Dehya. In her current state, there's a lot of disconnects with her gameplay design, and it's so unfortunate since she has such a badass design. And with her thrown into standard banners starting 3.6, there's no rush if you're not sure if you want Dehya. I personally won't max Constellation her right away, it'll happen over time. Her weapon, on the other hand, may or may not return after this banner, so Godspeed if you want to pick up her crit rate Claymore. Thanks as always for watching. Let me know what you think of her in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Take care.